Assalomu alaykum. Yana bir marta.
Good day, dear participants of our session. Now we are going to continue our discussion on the strategy. So first, we have the speakers. First, all speakers will have their lectures. After they finish, we go to the Q&A session. If you have any questions, so let me introduce them. First, we're going to talk about the parliament. Jahangir Jabbarovich, he is the chairman of the Republic on Legislative Chamber, and Philip Dmitriev, he will be participating online from European Union Venice Commission Vice President, and so we also will be talking about the independence of the court. So Mr. Kamilov, he is the Minister of Justice. So also Charlotte Adrian, also he is the ambassador of European Union to Uzbekistan, and also we'll be talking about corruption. So Mr. Burhanov, he would be talking, he's the director of the anti-corruption agency of Uzbekistan. So also we have the friends from Turkmenistan. They initiated to have a speech here, Mr. Nuriev Yagmir. So he'll be also participating online. With your permission, we give the floor to Jahangir Jabbarovich. So dear participants, you can participate from your place, or you can come up to the stage. Good day, dear participants of the conference. First of all of you know, for the last 5 years, Uzbekistan is developing strongly for the last 5 years with a strong, deepened reforms. First of all, when we're talking about the strategies, so national parliamentarism's development of the so we strengthened the system. So for the lately, the role of the parliament has changed deeply since 2017. President's speech to the parliament, and this institution has been established in the new stage of the development of Uzbekistan. Parliament's activity has also turned into the openness and transparency based on the requirement from the mass media. All the meetings of the fractions and the monitoring processes have all been broadcasted online. So also the mechanisms of electronic parliament. During the pandemic situation, the national parliament hasn't stopped its activity for even 1 day, and most of the drafts and the voting process have been done online. When we talk about the creativeness of the parliament, and it has come up to the new stage, first of all, when we talk from the scientific point of view, the parliament has established an institute on research. So we also should underline the concept on lawmaking has increased to the new level, particularly regarding the lawmaking in international ratings, taking into consideration the recommendations to improve the ratings. So also sub-laws, bylaws, and execution of them is particularly being paid attention. So social relationships, so unique codification system has been introduced. For example, recently we have had 5 codex, and now we have a unique one election code. Previously, law initiators, they've been only introducing the draft laws and they haven't been participating in the discussion. As the result, the other drafts that were introduced by other parties was done by the deputies only, and it missed the hot discussion. Now, all the draft laws that are accepted in the first hearing, the subjects, law initiators, they are protecting their draft laws and they're participating in the draft hearing. So that has kind of unleavened. And also the draft processes for the last 3 years has increased for 3 times. So court system and the social protection laws, and there are some other laws that haven't been existed previously. For example, laws on corruption, law on volunteering are some of them. Dear participants of the conference, to strengthen the parliamentarism, the reforms and the powers of monitoring has also increased. Particularly on cabinet ministers, reporting has been introduced. And this kind of institution is to force and to strengthen the powers of the parliament and to make them participate in the process actively. So there is a special institution on government hour. This institution is kind of a new introduction to the parliamentary. So a number of daily life questions are introduced to the deputies. These kind of events are broadcasted by YouTube online. Previously, parliamentary monitoring were included government bodies. Now they also include because there are a number of issues, civil society issues are not related to the government bodies, but also to the civil societies. That's why they monitor both parties. For the first time, there's a state budget was approved by the law, and the monitoring on the state budget also was done by the ministries. So, for example, previously, the Senate member was also saying it was not only in the percentages, but also it is also monitored by the state bodies and ministries. Today, we are not controlling the state bodies, also the candidates and the practice of admitting the candidates for the government positions. This also shows the participation of the public. Also, there is a special position was introduced in the cabinet of ministers. Lately, the constant communication and dialogue with the public and the new mechanism was introduced, and the effective measures were introduced in the districts and regions. So in election districts, communications have been changed, the system of work has been changed. Now the deputies are now going to the public, not the public is coming to the deputies. For example, previously in the district election, for example, they visited twice or 3 times a week. Now every week they are now going to the district election and they're communicating. For the they lately also communicating by the usage of IT system. Now you can also see yourself. In order to strengthen the deputies' dialogue with the public, They're using also the social mass media like Telegram. Lately, the great changes has been in the prosecutors' office and the self-governance bodies also. Their liability is also shown. So here lately, so the separate, for example, special power for the self-governing bodies. So also the Hakim, the city administration's power also is we're coming to the, we are doing work on that. Dear participants of the event, for the lately, the youth participation in the parliament has been special attention was given, for example, especially by the legislative chamber members, 9 of them. 9 of them are deputies under 30. So there is a by their the offers, the suggestions, 19 suggestions were introduced in the drafts. Dear participants, Uzbekistan is the member of the international and also the member of the Parliamentary Assembly of OSCE. This also shows by the broad range of their cooperation and opening a new range of opportunities. Lately, a number of groups of cooperation groups have been established. Previously it was 28. This year they have reached to 23 interparliamentary cooperation groups. So lawmaking has also introduced, for example, for the last years, the ratification of international laws. 47 laws have been approved, and it also shows the double for the previous time. Uzbekistan's liability in international laws and the roadmap execution, there is a parliament's monitoring was introduced. For example, Sustainable Development Goals of the UN and its roadmap execution is also monitored by the parliament. Dear participants, many researchers, as was noted by them, parliament is the is a crossroads of is a symbol of the public. In order to strengthen the parliament's role and its reforms, they require active participation by the public. By this, the parliament is the initiator of all the reforms, and it's showing its all power to strengthen this. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear Jahangir Jabbarovich. Well, talking about the parliament, there is a great interest, there is a great requirement in each direction. Our deputies are showing their efforts from the positive sides to the public with their initiatives. So the next speaker is Mr. Philip Dmitriev. He should be online. He is the Venice Commission Vice President of European Council.
This 5 years of fast developing and which coincides with the achieved and what remains to be done. As you know, the Venice Commission, can you hear me? As you know, the Venice Commission is a commission for democracy through law. This is its official title. And in fact, it contains an important signal that the rule of law is absolutely basic for a modern democracy. In itself is based on the division of powers and the respect for human rights, is something absolutely essential for every country which takes up the democratic way of development. This has been a long period of time, also about 30 years, in which the Venice Commission was developing instruments and techniques to participate in the efforts of countries which are trying to achieve these ends. And I'm happy to say
hozirgi paytda islohotlar va hamkorlik paytida O'zbekistonning hamkorligi juda samarali bo'ldi. Shuning uchun mamnuniyat bilan ta'kidlaymizki, 5 yil oldingi holatga nisbatan hozirgi rivojlanish jarayonlari juda quvonarli natijalar berdi. Shuning uchun shuningdek ta'kidlash joizki, hatto o'tgan yili ham O'zbekiston Respublikasi prezidenti janob Mirziyoyev milliy inson huquqlar strategiyasini imzoladilar va bu mamlakatda inson huquqlarini ilgari surish bo'yicha institutsional rivojlantirish maqsadlarini o'z oldiga qo'ydi. Albatta bu borada ham biz hamkorlik qilishimiz mumkin bo'lgan keng doiralar bor. Biz O'zbekiston Respublikasi tegishli vazirlik idoralari bilan ishlab kelyapmiz, ko'plab muhokamalar olib boryapmiz. Va albatta biz yangi saylov kodeksi bo'yicha ham samarali ishladik. Biz o'zimizni tavsiyalarimizni berdik. Bizning tavsiyalar albatta inobatga olindi. Va undan keyin saylovlar bo'yicha hisobotda aynan shu bizning tavsiyalarimiz o'z aksini topdi. Shuningdek, aytmoqchimanki, bu davr mobaynida Venetsiya komissiyasi har xil O'zbekiston bilan birgalikda sa'y harakatlarni amalga oshirdi va shuningdek biz inson huquqlari milliy markazi bilan birgalikda juda ko'p ishlar olib bordik va shuningdek Oliy Majlis hamda Adliya vazirligi bilan ham yaxshi hamkorlikni amalga oshirdik. Va O'zbekiston Respublikasi a'zo bo'lgan Konstitutsiya komissiya bo'yicha xalqaro anjumanni qo'llab-quvvatladik. 2020-yilda biz shuningdek Markaziy Osiyoda qonun ustuvorligi dasturini boshladik. Bu dasturda Venetsiya komissiyasi o'z hissasini qo'shib kelmoqda. Bu dastur parlamentlar tomonidan qonun ustuvorligini ta'minlash, hokimiyatlar bo'linishini ta'minlash bo'yicha harakatlar amalga oshiriladi. Undan tashqari, Venetsiya komissiyasi shuningdek ma'muriy islohotlarga ham o'z hissasini qo'shdi va shuningdek nizolarni muqobil yechish yo'llari bo'yicha ham bir qancha tadbirlar amalga oshirib keldik. Shuningdek, biz davlat xizmatchilarining institutsional rivojlanishi va salohiyatini oshirishi bo'yicha bir qancha ishlar amalga oshirdik. Men aslida juda ko'p tadbirlarni aytib o'tishim mumkin. Biz qonun ustuvorligi bo'yicha barcha yo'nalishlarda o'z faoliyatimizni yuritib kelyapmiz. Bu borada barcha jamiyat hayotining barcha jabhalarida Venetsiya komissiyasi ishlashi mumkin. O'zbekiston tegishli manfaatdor tomonlar bilan birgalikda shuningdek mamnuniyat bilan aytamanki, Adliya vazirligi bilan birgalikda biz juda yaxshi aloqalar o'rnatdik va qo'shma tadbirlar bo'yicha biz yo'l xaritasini imzoladik. Va shuningdek yana bir bor ta'kidlab o'tmoqchiman. Men bu o'z faoliyatimizdan juda qoniqqanligimni mamnuniyat bilan ta'kidlamoqchiman. Va men aminmanki, bu yaxshi hamkorligimiz yana chuqurlashtirib davom etadi va albatta juda ko'p ijobiy natijalarga erishiladi. Va o'z navbatida O'zbekistonning yuqori o'z oldiga qo'ygan yuqori maqsadlar sari yaqinlashtiradi. Va albatta davlat hokimiyatining barcha institutlarini isloh qilishga va takomillashtirishga imkoniyat yaratadi. E'tiboringiz uchun rahmat.
Katta rahmat. Venetsiya komissiyasi bilan umuman aloqalar juda yaxshi, chunki ko'p mana yangi qonunchilik tashabbuslari bo'yicha bo'layotgan loyihalarimizni hammasini mana shu holatlarda yuqori standartda ishlaydigan Venetsiya komissiyasini xulosalari juda katta ahamiyatga ega. Ya'ni biz chiqarayotgan hujjatlari xalqaro standartlarga mosligi nuqtai nazaridan birgalikda ishlash, birgalikda hamkorlik albatta davom ettiramiz. Rahmat sizga ishtirokingiz uchun. Keyingi mavzu bo'yicha ruxsatlaringiz bilan o'zim axborot bersam, hukumat modernizatsiyasi to'g'risida gapiradigan bo'lsak, nimaga biz hukumat to'g'risida mana shu modernizatsiya degan so'zni ishlatdik? Chunki rostdan oxirgi 5 yilda davlat tashkilotlarining ishlash tizimi zamonaviylashdi. Buni hamma to'g'ri tushunyapti. Hamma ta'lim muassasalari ham, boshqa davlat tashkilotlari, vazirliklar, u yerdagi xalq bilan muloqot, yaqinlashish, hisobdorlik, ochiqlik nuqtai nazaridan juda katta o'zgarishlar bo'ldi. O'z-o'zidan bo'lib qolmadi albatta. Juda qiyin jarayon kechdi. Hozir ham masalan aytadigan bo'lsak, aholini ehtiyoji juda katta. Talabi yuqori. Talabga to'g'ri kelib uni qondirish nuqtai nazaridan axborot
these
поставлены
expectations
на высокий уровень, на высокую планку мы должны
to meet,
достигнуть
satisfy those
высокой планки.
expectations and
При
work
этом
with public.
большую роль
In
играет
that regard,
также
we have a lot
участие
to do
средств
still,
массовой информации.
I would like to mention
Я бы
some
хотел
triggers
поговорить о
for such
некоторых видах
cooperation. First
деятельности.
is
Первое – это
legislation. In the
законодательная
legislation
деятельность, второе – это
sphere, we are also
надзорная деятельность.
instituting public control. For example, the law on public-private partnership. Just the law on administrative
Bu yerda
procedure.
uni ichidagi belgilangan katta talablar mana hozir yangi redaksiyasi, yangi tahriri ham taqdim etildi parlamentimizga. Mana shu taomillar asosida biz xalq bilan bo'ladigan munosabatimizni tartibga solyapmiz. Yaqinda qabul qilingan talablarga asosan ochiq ma'lumotlar shaklida joylashtirish kerak bo'lgan ijtimoiy ahamiyatga molik ma'lumotlar 33 ta holatda majburiy berilishi kerak bo'lgan holatlar belgilandi. Ochiqlik indeksi davlat organlari orasida belgilanadigan bo'lyapti. Bu ochiqlik degani aytishga oson, to'g'risi mana biz ham hukumatda ishimiz, lekin bitta qadamimiz agar birovga yoqmaydigan qadam bo'lsa, albatta yashirishga harakat qiladi. Ko'p holatlarda shunaqa. Shuning uchun bu ochiqlik ham katta mas'uliyat va biz uchun, jamiyatimiz uchun yaxshi. Qaysi vazirlikka qiyin bo'lishi mumkin, lekin jamiyat uchun yaxshi. Qancha pul ketkazyapti? Kerak bo'lsa o'sha rahbarlarni xonasini ta'mirlash uchun qancha pul ketyapti? Mashinasi uchun mana mashinalar bo'yicha juda katta jamiyatimiz bu mutasaddi bunday mashina olibdi, bu undan olibdi degan masalalarni qo'yapti. Bu mas'uliyat bizning mas'uliyatimizga ta'sir qilyapti. Keyingi safar ozgina modeli arzonroq mashina olishga harakat qilamiz. Ya'ni jamiyat tarbiyalaydi shu yo'llar orqali, ochiqlik orqali. Buni ham tan olishimiz kerak va buni
to think ahead, what will the public say about such expenditure? So we have to be open about it. Also, we have this task of posting information of websites, and every year there is a tradition to report on activities via press conferences. This will start from January. There is also public control fund, which was instituted because it is in the government's interest to have this public control. And even the fund was created so that this process could be funded. Speaking about state administration, I can mention that one chain which works with public is Hakimiats, city administrations and regional administrations on all levels, region and city and district levels. They work with public. It is the first line of public work, and they take the first strike from public if something happens. That's why in this area this direction is also being developed and reformed. Now the decentralization process is going on because a lot of powers are being given to city administrations and regional administration, because that way the public can be served better, so that they don't have to come to the capital to address their issues. Right now we started with 38 types of public services. Now the type of public services reached over 100. And public services centers are serving from 70 to 100 people daily. And by state services center, we are providing public services. And now public is even getting more modern, because if something happens, they try to discuss in social media. If something is delayed, they are not silent. We also opened 150 regional branches of state public services centers. We are now in the process of preparation of new strategy, and of course we have a lot of tasks ahead of us. We are speaking about government reception offices. There are thousands of applications to those offices. If last year we received 1.4 million applications, this year the applications number are much higher. This speaks of the fact that people are still have their challenges and problems. Sometimes people come to public services center with problems which came into existence 15 years ago. And the same with judicial system, the same with other systems. Of course, with that, we are getting a lot of applications from public because the public is interested in reforms. But nevertheless, we did not increase the staff members. On the contrary, we were trying to optimize and downsize the staff members in governmental agencies. If government civil servants work correctly, then they don't need extra staff. Even in notarial services, we are trying to implement a lot of reforms. For example, we are trying to reduce the time spent in notarial services for people. So that's why we are trying to do systematic changes and reforms in all areas of public administration. I would like to mention the Agency for Development of State Civil Service. Also, we are trying to promote the merit-based hiring process to government and government offices. There is a dedicated website on vacancies. The portal is working on this, and each vacancy is being transparent and is being done online. We don't have a law on civil service. Of course, this is the basic fundamental law that should exist in every country. But this is in the draft process right now. We're trying to facilitate, and it is our task to adopt this law by the end of this year. We cancelled 110 commissions because we had a lot of commissions, many interagency groups and commissions. We had a long red tape and long procedures for different processes. That's why we are pursuing now this policy of reducing the number of commissions, including interagency working groups, and charge ministries with those tasks, because we have to work on improvement of vertical decision-making process as well as horizontal decision-making process, because there should be a coordination between the relevant ministries, and that way the processes should be expedited. We spoke a lot about licensing procedure. For 6 months, a working group worked on reform of licensing process. But speaking about public participation, we never had any proposal that we need to cancel a certain getting proposals from ministries and agencies. We never had any proposal that licensing should be repealed or cancelled, because ministries were not interested to give up their licensing power, regulating power. But now we, of course, changing the system. There is, instead of licensing, there is informing of certain things to ministries and agencies. And during the high-level government meetings, we are getting instructions to work to reduce the regulating powers of ministries and government agencies. There is license.gov.uz. You can visit that website and you can see that it regulates the licensing procedure and provides online and digital services. Speaking about rule of law, we're also lawyers here. You know that there is World Justice Program rating. Uzbekistan takes 19th position in that ranking. So we don't want to look up to others, but we're trying to develop our own index. For example, we are developing indicators based on the corruption perception, criminality perception, as well as trust in judiciary, in the review of judicial decisions. There are a lot of criteria. We are trying to set such an index in order to assess ourselves, and so that we can be assessed by public. And there is also open budget portal, open information portal, which is also our achievement. You just witnessed recently that in public procurement there are certain things that resonated in public. That's why we are trying to make all the public procurement process transparent, and government agencies are themselves interested in such open procedure, because they don't want to get pressure from the public, because public knows everything. If something is some procurement is related to high officials daughter or son, it is now in a public domain, and there is a lot of pressure. That's why we need to ensure that all expenditures, public procurement, all contracts are open, they're done through online procedure. If whenever a counterparty is a side in the governmental contract, that contract should be open and transparent. If we take e-decision, for example, in all districts and regions, we are trying to transfer all paper-based decisions into e-platform and have digital. For example, 5,000 decisions were adopted through e-decisions, and now the repealing Hakim's decision are now decreased, because now their decisions are open in public, and whenever the public has control, of course, the advantage is that those decisions are made correctly, plus there are less frivolous claims to courts, applications to courts, because if we get the backlog in courts, even if you appointed 1,000 judges, we will not be able to cope with the number of cases. That's why we need to optimize this procedure. We need to train and build the capacity of lawyers and judicial personnel. We have the vacancy of 1,000 lawyers, and these are being trained by the Ministry of Justice Legal Training Center. We also have a lot of labor conflicts related to education and preschool and labor contracts. That's why we are trying to raise the capacity of lawyers in these fields. I also would like to mention we need to have very concise government administration. We don't want the expansion of state administration. We don't want to increase the expenditures for maintenance of state administration. Instead, that funding can be directed at economic purposes. State agency means red tape. It means additional management, administrative functions. That's why we now need to be free of that red tape, extra administration and extra management of different spheres of society. We in the government see that our number one priority, and we need to work on this. Also, we need to continue decentralization procedure. We don't want to concentrate power in Tashkent city. Even, for example, in veterinary sphere or in other agriculture sphere, sometimes all paperwork comes to Tashkent if the person doesn't come. Sometimes paperwork comes to Tashkent, but we need to work on decentralization so that at local levels things are being addressed and resolved much higher. Also, another task is working closely with private sector. We need also to continue working, because private sector works better than public. For example, we see in notaries, some people support that, some people don't, but we try to institute private notaries. We are still trying to improve this institution, but whenever the actions which have legal significance, they are being approved by notaries. If we are transferring some powers to notaries, then we can do the same with some other public administrative functions. Also, we are trying to transfer the penitentiaries maintenance to private sector. We have to work with private sector a lot. For the first time, this penitentiary sector is being transferred to private sector. Even forensic examiners need to be transferred to private sector. And if there is insurance and if there is quality, then there is a public trust in those forensic experts. Now, a lot of governmental service centers, there are a lot of applications to governmental public services centers, but indeed that should not be the case. People should be sitting in their homes and doing that from their devices. Many other countries achieved results, for example South Korea, even not the whole Russia, but Moscow and Georgia, Singapore is also advanced in this regard. We have to be for example, to keep up with this process. It can be licensing relations, or any other services could be accessible through digital platforms, and they should not people should not be enforced to come to public services centers. These are basically our results. Of course, there is a lot to say, but I wanted to be brief, and I would like to give the floor to the next speaker, Mr. Kazimjan Fazilovich, Chairperson of the Supreme Court.
Good day, dear participants of the conference, ladies and gentlemen. So, in order to provide independence of the court system is one of the pillars of building independent state. For that reason, in order to provide the independent court and to provide the rights, to come up to the fair trial and to introduce the fair system, for the last years, I can say without exaggeration, the court system has been radically changed. Here now, during my lecture, I would not be able to stop on each direction, but we have to take into account the time. I'll try to talk in short. First of all, the court system, in order to develop the Uzbekistan, that was one of the strategies. So for the last 5 years, more than 50 laws have been admitted. 3 codes have been renovated. In 2021, 2026, the law on courts. This is also very important with its sub-laws, bylaws, and there was also Supreme Council of the Judges. The law has also been adopted. The main decisions, if we look at the main decisions in 2016, it was strengthening and reformation of the court system and guaranteeing and ensuring of the court and system and judges. and also strengthening the court system adopted in 2017 and 2020, also to ensure the effectiveness of the fair trial, was also adopted. The candidates for the judges and selection and the appointment and the new selection procedures have been adopted, and for the first time the judges would be appointed for 5 years, and then for 10 years, and later for indefinite period have been adopted. So first for the first 5 years, and then they were a little bit in order for them to work fairly, and the next, for example, in order to work them in a fair trial, so that they to provide the reselection. If that continues, so the upper age for the judges is up to 65 years, for the Constitutional Court is for up to 70 years. This also provides the system of the fair judges. Here today, so in district judges is 38 years, for Supreme Court is 45 years is an average. For also here we're taking into consideration the judges that have been working for years, so they also to develop the institution of sustainable judges is important. One of the pillars also of the court system is to provide them financially. So there was a special department established for that reason. So it is under the court, Supreme Court, and so it changed to the state budgeting system. So also social protection of the judges has been strengthened. It's also one of the guarantees for the judges. So one of the other measures is independent selection have been adopted. For this reason, Supreme Council of Judges was established. So now they're working for. So the council consists of to attract civil society members, professional lawyers, and also from the members of law enforcement bodies were taken out from their council. So, for example, the chairperson also. So, for example, to initiate disciplinary proceedings have been stopped by the chairpersons. So, retraining system has been also strengthened, and judges high school established, and now the new judges are coming from so now it is compulsory for them to finish judges high school. And also 2017, any kind of interference in order to protect during their activity on fair trial, so the violation of immunity of judges is given the rights. So when the judges are interrogated as victims or suspects, there's also a special regulation was adopted. So there is this, every year, at the end of the year, there is a special information was given to the president on the activity of the judges. So the structure of the court system has been also strengthened. So Supreme Court has united all kinds of courts. That includes criminal court, economic court, and administrative court. So for civil cases, there is, in order to keep their speciality in district levels, there are special court levels were established. This was to win to overcome the barriers in the court system. Any kind of violation of the law, there are special administrative courts have been administered and their system has been approved. So these administrative courts, and generally saying, so it's kind of resolves the dispute between the government and the civil society and the public. So this also has been strengthened. For the last 9 months, 67,000 cases have been looked. 65% of them were won by the civilians. So around 5,000 decisions of the mayor's administration have been invalidated. 186 cases were won in favor of the entrepreneurs. So we know the court system is very important in the economics. Any entrepreneur that is investing to Uzbekistan, he is first of all taking care of and taking attention to the rule of law. In that case, any measures of rule of law should be put into execution, which requires any kind of disputes by the government and the entrepreneurs. There was a new regulation was adopted. Disputes with the large investors, it would be there is a special council that goes through the cases for large investors. So it is appointed by the law. So any other disputes, taking into consideration their will, it could be also, the hearings could be taken in the district and regional courts. So also habeas corpus has been enlarged, liberalization of the execution, a number of measures have been executed, particularly for extra criminalization have been abolished. Instead of them, to apply precautionary measures have been an examination of the witnesses in all the cases are so all the decisions on for the last 5 years, 3,900 civilians, 724 citizens have been released. 33,000 were released from the courtroom. But looks like very simple numbers, but their hope for the freedom, it's a great will of the God, and it also provides it's the result of the reforms. And also one of the important reforms is the decisions of the courts, reapplication of the decisions have been, there is a special institution have been established. For previously, a citizen should go through 7 instances. Now that decreased to 3 instances. So this was also admitted by the international experts. That shows the first of all, it's district courts, then district, and then the Supreme Court. So international control instance has been abolished. That was previously criticized by the international experts. And the dispute principle and the equality of the parties and their representatives and the claim have been equaled with the prosecutor's protest. So that was one of the biggest complaints, why prosecutor has the right, but why are you limiting with the prosecutor's protest? Now this barrier has been taken off. So previously it was only done by the prosecutor's initiative, now lawsuit, now any victim or defendant or their representatives, now they can also initiate and give their claim. In the hearings, in the public hearings, they have come to the international asserts, so they can participate also in the claims when the complaints are accepted by the court side. New institutions have been introduced. The existing ones have been strengthened. For example, so previously, now in all instances, this has been introduced. The first hearing in the criminal cases and the pre-meeting and mediation institutions have been introduced. The transparency of the courts has been introduced, and a number of measures have been taken also in that regard. In order to inform mass media, the briefing have been also publicized. So previously it was one person. Now we have a special department in all, for example, courts. Now we have a special PR representative who would be talking with the mass media. And now all the decisions that have been taken are publicized in the websites. All kind of cases. There are special mobile hearings also introduced. That was also one of the measures to strengthen the court power. The introduction of the ICT, it provides the transparency of the information. That was one of the difficult when we started. So that was one of the difficult. Not only the chairperson, Supreme Court chairperson could not take the information, but also the citizens. So what kind of case was taken? So that was not taken as statistical information. So now we're paying great attention to the information communication system for the last 4 years. So there was a special decision was taken, resolution was taken. So there was a great gathering of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization's meeting of the Supreme Courts, and we also participated there. Particularly automatic workload distribution of the court rules, why it is all so we've been always criticized why it was distributed by the courts themselves. First, we have to develop the probably some people know Russian, some people know Uzbek, some people know Karakalpak, so it was really difficult experience. Now we've overcome that, and now we easily practice that. So also electronic complaints can be and sending any kind of papers electronically. Here I should admit, execution paper from Tashkent's Yunusobod, for example, district to Dehqanobod in Surkhandarya, that could take 1 day, and it's possible to monitor that. And it's also the decisions of the court are now announced in the website. This is also one of the difficult, important. So now any citizen can go to our website and can read any decision. Any student can read it, and they can also take as an example. So digitalization of the fair trial. So now, as was mentioned by a Minister of Justice, so working with the notorious, with the so you can talk to the court judges now. For example, someone came with the dispute, so now he can take a number of claims and give some. Now it could be taken within 30 seconds. So 28 are connected. 28 state agencies are connected, interconnected. So information exchange has been 100% digitalized. Supreme Court of the interactive portal has been working. So now where we started and where we have come now. Now we are also providing interactive services. You can see in the slide. So samples, everything is here. Of course. So a sample of claims in 400 samples that we have done in 3 languages. Not everyone can have the opportunity to hire a lawyer. So now from his home he can use the billing system, he can pay, and then he can send a complaint. Of course, this all works. It contributed to the increase in the ratings in March this year. So Meros Foundation's rating, it strengthened 44 positions. So 32 points, it increased to 58 points. Fairness and justice and the rule of law's role in this would be very crucial of the court system. Only this can protect the civilians and citizens. For the last years, a wide range of works have been done, but it doesn't mean that all the problems have been solved. It's too early to talk about this. Yesterday, I talked to the international head of the organization, and 20 years, it's a long time. It's very difficult to satisfy citizens about the court system, but we have to raise the awareness of public about the court system. So the deep analysis of all these processes is a very new approach to provide the rule of law. So still we are now analyzing. So we have to do the number of works, the tasks. First of all, in order to provide the effectiveness of the work, every instance should work his work in high quality. Here, for example, in one institute, in one instance, it's a new approach we have to analyze. When we talk about the reforms in the court, it's introduction of the new, because we don't have the rights to return back. That's why, as we say it, we have to 7 times measure, 1 time cut. So everything is done by the to create better conditions for the citizens. In the future, so we have connected the district and the regional courts. So if we come to the level that we in the districts also we establish one institute, one instance. So if we are able to do all the hearings in one court, the criminal and economic, that would be our great achievement. Also, strengthening of their habeas corpus. Any defendant, any victim, we are now analyzing. To protection of the citizens and to strengthen the effectiveness of fair trial, a new code of the criminal code. This is a very big law, so we're working very hard on that. Fourthly, the international norms and principles and the United Nations Special Envoy's advice of the we have almost executed most of them, and some of them would be done later. The workload of the judges also was mentioned by our minister previously. So now it's not 120, it's increased to 150. So the citizens' complaints to the courts increased radically. And so during the pandemic, so in 2020, compared with 2090, it increased to 60%. So some now people are talking and using the term, I will talk to you in the court. So, and the workload, we're trying to decrease the workload for the judges. To prepare the new system with the new approach, appointing the judges, we're also working on the high school for judges. Now we're trying to educate them with connecting with the practical experience. So when he's working as a critical, as a criminal judge, 20% should be theory and 80% should be practice. He should work with the local policemen and also work with the prosecutors. And also one of the important thing, one of the greatest elements is the society of the judges. Now we have the law on court judges, and now all the powers have been clearly distributed. Now it should be a society that based on the democratical principles. So this society and the law should be, so it should be new approach. So it should be conference of the judges. So the society of the judges should solve their own problems themselves. Particularly the next issues, the new level of the reforms, as a real protector of the entrepreneurs. Now it's showing some inequality with the public and the official. It's kind of limited these days. So that's why we have to, now we are receiving some suggestions that any violations of the citizens by the officials, it should be protected effectively by the administrative courts, and the measures should be taken, which means that should include any loss by the individual should be taken by the administrative courts. So here the court would be more active, and the official that took the decision, and then he has to explain why he has taken that decision. There should be one window service for the courts as well. If he is sending to the civil court, and then it will be redirected to other courts. In general, all the reforms, they should be the human rights protection is the basis. So a lot of work hasn't been done. The most important, we have done great steps to provide the independence of the courts and judges. And then if you can now compare the court system 5 years ago and now. Thank you.
Thank you for comprehensive presentation. I would like to mention that as we are witnessing, democracy, when is not so developed, the development still can happen in those countries. But if public administration does not develop, then the country cannot develop too. That's why we wish great success to this responsible work you do. The next speaker, Ms. Charlotte Adrian, European Union Ambassador to Uzbekistan. Please, the floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum. Dear distinguished panel members, dear Minister, and dear ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor for me to have the opportunity today to be here and to listen, in fact, very carefully to all the reports regarding the reforms, which, in my view, are amazing when I hear where we are today. I will not be able to give you, in fact, more specifics on the reforms, but what I can do is maybe talk a little bit about rule of law and how we see it, in fact, in the EU. And this may also, in fact, trigger some of our feelings as well. The European Union is a union of 27 member states. We used to have 28, but now we only have 27 left. And it's based on rule of law. And it's one of the fundamental values. It's in our treaty, which is like a constitution, and we cherish it. We cherish it. It's based on lots of shared values, but including a part, especially the respect for fundamental rights, democracy, and rule of law. They are seen, maybe what is the most important is that these values, in fact, are seen when we do surveys, when we ask people. These values are seen by the European citizens among the EU's main assets. And it's also seen like a shared responsibility to in fact, to safeguard these. So, while the EU is recognized by, I think, by everybody, or by all the countries, let's say this way, as having very high standards in these areas, these values should never be taken for granted. This is why, in fact, in EU, what we have done is that we have, although we have been working on these shared values for so many years, we have 2 years ago introduced an annual rule of law report. And in fact, the second one was presented in July this year. And what it does is, it's not an index, absolutely not an index. Indexes are measuring quickly, or maybe not quickly, but measuring some parts. But this is a qualitative assessment of what is going well, and where the progresses are, and also where the problems are. And in fact, it goes into 4 very specific areas. It goes into the justice systems, it goes into the anti-corruption frameworks, it goes into the media freedom and pluralism, and the institutional issues related to checks and balances. So, in fact, for us, promoting and upholding the rule of law does require vigilance and constant improvement, because there's always a risk of backsliding. So the rule of law is not only an integral part of the democratic identity of EU, but of a country. It's not only part of the democratic identity of the EU and all its member states, but it's also essential for the functioning and continued functioning of the EU, for the citizens and for the businesses to trust the public institutions. And while our 27 member states have different legal systems and different traditions, the core meaning of the rule of law is the same across the EU. The key principles of the rule of law are common to all our member states: the legality, the legal certainty, the prohibition of the arbitrary exercise of executive power, the effective judicial protection by independent, impartial courts, the respect of fundamental rights in full, the separation of powers, the permanent subjection of all public authorities to establish laws and procedures, and the equality before the law. These are all enshrined in the national constitutions, and they are translated into legislation. And obviously, this is not something that has come overnight. It has taken time, and it continues to take a lot of time. And as mentioned, we now have our second monitoring report on the state of the rule of law in the European Union. And I can tell you, it's not problem-free. It's definitely not problem-free. So why is this important for Uzbekistan? I think because we've seen, we've heard, and I am amazed by the number of reforms, but also implementations of laws, regulations, but also taking up the challenges and, in fact, also seeing the solutions that can be brought to it, being it with training of judges, training of lawyers, but also seeing that there are not a lot of lawyers, making sure that people are aware of it. And this is maybe where it's becoming the most important, is to make sure that all these changes that are happening, and I see again, it says the fast-paced reforms, that all these fast-paced reforms are not leaving anyone behind, meaning not only about not giving access to justice, but also making sure that everybody is aware, that there is the awareness, that there is the understanding of the reforms, and that this makes it possible for Uzbekistan to reach its goal. And I understand that the overarching objectives also, of course, of rule of law is to ensure that there will be inclusive and sustainable growth in order to create jobs and reach the sustainable development goals, to halve the poverty in 2026, and also to become an upper middle income country in 2030. This is what I understood, having participated in this conference, but also in previous conference the weeks before. And though this is extremely ambitious in such a short time, I see that so many things have already been done. And again, I congratulate for all the work that has been done. And, as we say in Europe, Rome was not built in one day. It does take time. And it's definitely for us the most important to see that this is the basis for the functioning of the state, for the capacity of the state to deliver public services. And it really depends on the reality of the rule of law. It's for the citizens to trust the state and the public institutions. The rule of law cannot be, more important or more essential. The equality before the law, being aware of it, being a woman or a man, a government, a civil servant, or a human rights defender or a journalist. And to exercise the law has to be fair and transparent. We had a talk about this yesterday with the chairperson of the Supreme Court, and I see that this is really the most important for the society and for the citizens to accompany and benefit from the reforms. So in fact, from our side, a strong and a resilient society in Europe and here is made of people who are empowered and it's made of energetic citizens, and the energy comes from the trust that you have in the state and in the public institutions. Finally, we saw there's so much that has been done for the businesses, for the entrepreneurs. In Europe, 98% of the jobs are created by SMEs, by small and medium-sized enterprises, by entrepreneurs. And for them to thrive, for them to create the economic growth and the jobs, the legal clarity, the legal certainty, and the fight against corruption is vital. The trust that an investor, and you have spoken about it before, we have spoken about it also in the Anti-Corruption Agency, the trust that an investor is prepared to place in the judiciary of a country is one of the key elements in an investment decision. And the independence of judiciary, of course, is also key. So for the foreign investors to come, but more importantly, for the foreign investors to invest and to stay with the investment and make it grow, to create green growth, because this is also one of the reforms, the green growth. There is a need definitely for a level playing field with clear regulations and practices, and that's definitely needed. Now, I have not been here for a very long time. I only arrived in March, but I am still very impressed by the number of reforms, the pace of the reforms, and I'm also impressed by having met, in fact, the Minister of Justice, the chairperson of the Supreme Court, also the Anti-Corruption Agency. I see that everybody is working on these reforms. For the EU, what I can say is that the negotiations for the Enhanced Partnership and Cooperation Agreement, which is also about rule of law. From the beginning to the end, it is about rule of law. This is ongoing. It's not completely finalized, but we're getting to the end. The GSP+, which is a trade system, which is making it possible for Uzbek export to the EU, free of tax. 6,200 products can freely flow into the EU. They depend, in fact, on the implementation and on the ratification and the implementation of 27 conventions in all the sectors. Now, obviously, this is not granted to anybody, I mean to everybody, let's say it this way. This is granted to the countries where we believe that reforms are going on. So maybe for me, this is the best example or the best proof that in fact, I mean, we see the reforms going on. But again, let me maybe finish with this. This is something, as I said in the beginning, in EU as well, the monitoring is going on. The monitoring needs to go on. It's done, it's a question of accountability. It's a question for the people, but it will also anyway come out at one point if the reforms are stalled or not continued. But what we see from our side is definitely that the reforms are continuing, and we would like to, as EU, with our partners, but also definitely with our member states, we would definitely like to continue to support in all the areas that I have mentioned. We will in the future also work on governance and rule of law. This is also a progress in my view, because we were not doing this before, but now there is an interest and an appetite for working on this together, and I think this is also definitely a progress. So with this in mind, and I will not go too much more into to details. I would just like to wish you and definitely also the people of Uzbekistan all the best wishes for the continuation. And we will be here, the EU. We have been here from the beginning. We will continue to be here, and we will gladly share experiences, capacity building, where you see that EU can come in. We are very happy to provide, and we're very happy to share and to have peers working together. This is quite important for us. We believe that this is a good way of doing it. So with this in mind, I would like to say thank you very much, Katar Ahmad, and looking forward to see and accompany and support all the reforms that you have already done and that will continue, I hope. Thank you very much.
Katta rahmat.
Thank you very much. With EU, we work closely. We have a lot of joint projects, and we are ready to continue this cooperation. And the next topic is, of course, related to every citizen of our country, and probably number one topic of discussion. And this is a topic of corruption. And to give presentation, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Akmal Shondadayevich, Director of Anti-Corruption Agency. Thank you very much. Dear participants of conference, ladies and gentlemen, many participants of the conference have seen the processes of implementation of action strategy for 2017-2021, and some of you even participated in these processes, and we all are witnessing that a lot of tasks envisaged in the action strategy are being implemented and brought positive results, and the significance and scale of the reforms as we speak, they are immense, and of course people of Uzbekistan are feeling in their lives. Speaking about anti-corruption, we also carried out a lot of activities including improvement of this anti-corruption system, elimination of conditions, and developing zero tolerance towards corruption, increasing transparency of governmental agencies, and increasing the public control. In this direction, I would like to briefly tell about our activities. First of all, we improved the regulatory framework of anti-corruption activities last year in every spheres of life. In order to eliminate corruption, we adopted over 80 normative legal acts. After President Mirziyoyev took the office, one of the first laws in January, it was signing the law on anti-corruption. Also, we adopted the law on public procurement, on public-private partnership, on sharing personal information, on the law on public control. These all legislative pieces of legislation, of course, promoted our activities in terms of anti-corruption. Also in administrative reforms, we have done a lot of institutional changes. As we said, the review of application of legal and physical persons was improved, including through presidential reception offices, and of course we provided the freedom of application of citizens to state agencies. Also, this as a result, we have seen the reduction of corruption in mid-level government agencies. Also, we have done a lot of practical measures to work with public and to increase transparency and public control. Right now, 160 type of public services are being provided to citizens through public services centers and through use of information technologies on digital problems. And this reduces the human factor and as such reduces the chances of corruption. We are also using widely the digital technologies. We are decreasing corruption and corruption factors in distribution of lands. We are introducing the procedure of auctions in public procurement. We instituted the such platforms as e-construction, e-notary offices, and in order to eliminate red tape and eliminate old rules, unnecessary and repeating redundant rules. We are also we have reduced the number of licensing procedures in order to provide transparency of public agencies and increase the freedom of information. Right now, all information, all public information, financial expenditure of government agencies, they are being placed online in public domain. And for the first time, the country developed a procedure for analyzing corruption factors, and we created a separate independent body, anti-corruption agency in Uzbekistan. The main directions and functions of this agency is to prevent corruption, to promote public policy with regard to anti-corruption, as well as analyzing the conditions and factors of corruption. We are also responsible for developing state programs, responsible for introducing compliance system in state bodies, and identification of corruption factors and taking measures to eliminate those. Also working with mass media as well as international organizations in all levels of public service, increasing the authority of public agencies. And for that, in 2019, we instituted state public services agencies, and the staff members of the agency also under government control. For the last 5 years, the salaries of public servants increased almost 3 times. As a result of these reforms, Uzbekistan in Corruption Perception Index from 180 countries took 146 position. Compared to 2018, its position increased 12 steps. So this all shows the results of the work we are implementing. Of course, we cannot brag about this. We still have a lot of problems and gaps in this regard, but still I can mention that we are continuing our fight against corruption. Only in 2021, President signed 3 important documents. First of all, the law on ensuring the openness of government agencies, and as well as reducing the corruption factors in governmental agencies and increasing public oversight. So in 2021 and 2022, we also adopted state program of anti-corruption activities. We also have preventive mechanisms to prevent corruption, and we are also working with the principle of irreversibility of punishment and developing zero tolerance to corruption. With that, we will continue to work to increase transparency of government agencies. We are trying to institute the system of income declaration by public services, and working on prevention of conflict of interest, and also hiring to government positions through a merit-based and open process. And we are trying to institute internal control and compliance control mechanisms in governmental agencies, and also create electronic registry of corrupt officials. and criminalization of certain actions, and increase of criminal responsibility for corruption crimes. And also from now on the work will be ongoing. We have a lot of activities planned ahead of us, and today we're working on development of our work plan and working with international partners and international organizations as well as local partners. We are trying to developed medium and long-term anti-corruption strategy. We are also based our activities based on the plan of action and Istanbul platform of OECD. We are working also against UNCAC mechanism as well as other international standards, and trying to implement those international standards into national legislation. Also, in all levels of government agencies, we are trying to strengthen the hiring process and identify the mechanisms, institute the mechanisms for identification of conflict of interests. And we would like to institute the corruption perception index, national index, and in general on anti-corruption there are a lot of there is a sphere which is not being paid attention to. This is a business environment. We are working on proposals to start and include this sector in our work plan. As Mr. Ruslanbek Kuraltayevich mentioned, the reforms, all reform processes are being carried out with participation of public, and in the future we will be also taking into account public opinion, and we will be taking into account the expertise of international partners. Here our guests and experts can also present their ideas and participate in our discussions. Thank you very much for your attention.
So the next lecturer is the director of the State and Law and Democracy Institute, Mr. Dmitriev Yagmir Mamidjakovich. He will be connecting us online. Please take your floor.
First of all, please let me express my gratitude to the organizers for giving me the opportunity to participate and to speak at such an international forum. I listened intensively to all the speakers of the plenary session and of our section, and I congratulate my Uzbek brothers on their successful reforms. And I would like to first of all emphasize that a lot of parallels, a lot of social parallels in the economic development of Asian countries. And the speakers were talking about the intensification and digitalization, about the digital documenting, and a lot of other problems. All these factors are studied and examined. The things that are done in the countries of Central Asia it makes us very happy. My topic is the countries of Central Asia have the specific culture and have the large economic potential, and they cherish the cultural heritage of their countries and respect the national legislation systems. We have a lot in common, and the system of legislation is based on the mutual pillars, and after gaining the independence, being the rightful member of international community, the countries of Central Asia strengthened their goal to build the democratic and rightful state. What unites the countries of Central Asia for these 30 years? I can say that, first of all, this is the transmission to the market economy, and then the strengthening the market relations. Also, I should note that during this period, the legislation in this sphere was studied. The second, the state building of these countries was accompanied by the reforming of the national legislation. Third, adoption and the working out the constitution, which is the base of all the legislation system of the state, which is a strong fundament for the state power, and creates the necessary conditions for implementation of the economic potential and the cultural potential of the Central Asian countries. And ensuring the principles of the rule of law and the equality of everyone in front of the law, and the status of the state agencies. What we have heard during the speeches of the today's speakers regarding the digitalization in the court system, in the state service sector, is aimed to the implementation and the modern implementation of rights of the citizens and providing the state service. Everything starts from this, the ensuring of the rule of law starts. In this regard, the countries of the Central Asia have a lot in common. I would like to speak briefly in the system of civil legislation of the countries of Central Asia, which takes into account the which is the closest to the market economy, and the legislation related to the private right of the countries of Central Asia are an issue of interest for us. This is related to the to the private law, to the private rights also. Speaking about the comparative analysis of the civil codes of the Central Asian countries shows that with the help of civil codes, nothing new was created, and we just had the those regulations that have already been established. The comparative analysis shows that there are some specifics. For example, the civil code of Turkmenistan, based on the European method, is very different from the civil codes of other countries of Central Asia, although implementation of at the prior stages wasn't very simple, but currently, when the digital contracts are is in action, it shows that it's very effective. In law literature, it's noted that the implementation of civil rights is the goal to make the former Soviet republics closer. It's noted that these processes were in the states having the mutual law system. I wouldn't be very detailed about the civil law of Turkmenistan, because so now we are finishing our work. I would like to pay attention to the norms about the preservation of intellectual property, because it has the international character, and the right of intellectual property contains several directions. Currently, we have the development in all these directions, in detailed in the author rights and in all the directions of this sphere. In this area, the countries of Central Asia have a lot in common, as the safeguarding of the intellectual property has the international specific, and taking into account the culture and the specifics of the countries of Central Asia comes from the ancient times, and that is one of the reasons of that we have the this rapid development. Also, speaking about the private rights, it should be related to the international standards, and we should also implement the international contract. Speaking about the civil rights, they take their start from the period of the Silk Road. Starting from that period, the trade relations started to develop, and even then the regulations were established. Now they are the basis for the current legislation.
К выводу о гармонизированности наших правовых систем для развития.
And this is required for the development of the international cooperation among our countries. The strong rule of law basis is a characteristic of a powerful, flourishing state. Therefore, we are happy for the Republic of Uzbekistan that it has achieved positive results, positive transformations in the improvement of the human rights ensuring in the country. And therefore, in the Central Asian region, the human rights ensuring is based on the national foundation, on the basis of the national tradition. Therefore, we have to improve and further develop our national systems. And I would like to praise you for conduction of today's event. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your participation, Mr. Nureyev, for the interest that the Turkmenistan party showed to our conference. Dear participants of the conference, we have reached the end of our session, but I would like to give floor to... Thank you very much, dear moderator. I am a citizen of the Republic of Uzbekistan. I am a woman. I am a deputy of the...
First of all, great thanks to the organizers. As part of this society, as a citizen, there are reports, the results, when we look at the back, what we are doing today, tomorrow what we are going to do. The main reason here, so when we are doing this analysis, so the relation to the human being has changed. I have an opportunity 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 5 years ago, yesterday what was happening, and we can have a look and then analyze once again the approach to a human being's change, to the worldview, to the health, to the family, to the neighborhood, to the state, and to the society. Besides, human and the state relationship has radically changed. Now, humans' rights are on the top. So the prosecutor's office as well, it has changed from inside and from outside. And mainly, the relationship of a human being to prosecutor's office changed. The main purpose of the prosecutor's office is to provide the rule of law. Of course, to provide the rule of law should be someone's criminal activity would be opened, and we have to say about this. Who would like that? Of course, no one would like that, but the only a friend can only talk straightforward to you. Only friend can tell you to prevent you from illegal activity. We have a lot of things to do. The main thing here, we are with international cooperation, and support. Our knowledge, experience, our potential is increasing, especially and mainly, and the responsibility that was put by our president. We have the will and we have the potential for this, and we will do that, because in this society our children, our grandchildren are living and would live. So taking that, we wish you happiness, health, and to be united. We will be always with you. We're a simple Svetlana Artikova, a citizen of Uzbekistan, a simple woman. Thank you very much. So we actually, when we have a problem, we always refer to you. Thank you very much. Let's move on to the questions. So we have taken your time by bureaucratic lectures. Now you can pose a question.
My question is to the Minister of Justice. The question is about the prisons, but unfortunately we cannot hear well the question. Is not audible. Thank you for your question. I will start by replying to your question, and I would like to to warn you about not extracting my replies out of the general context. First of all, I would like to say that we are not in favor of transferring our prisons into private sector. Like in the United States, for example. This is a normal thing in other countries of the world, but in order to make this transformation, first of all, we have to have in place an efficient legislative mechanisms. Still, we're working on that. There are decisions of the government that regulate the entire procedure, step by step, of the analysis and transition of some powers of the judicial sector to the private sector. We are now getting closer to the stage when we will be actively transferring these powers to private sector facilities. In many spheres, the forensic expertise, for example, could be done by private entities. However, over it, a strict control should be executed. Now we will start gradual transition from the private forensic services, from the public forensic services to private ones. And in such spheres as notary functions, like transfer of heirloom, of the heritage inherited by the heirs, or in the sphere of the registration of the violation of traffic. The measures on punishment of the violators, perpetrators of the traffic rules will be done by private sector. No, it will not be so. The private sector will invest into this system. However, all the regulatory norms, all the types of punishment for violation of the traffic rules, for example, will be developed and implemented by the state bodies. As a Ministry of Justice, we are in favor of transfer of certain powers and services from public bodies to private entities. There was another question, but unfortunately it was not audible. And the Minister of Justice replied, no, definitely no, he said. About the facts on the conflict of interest, the second question was. I would like to add that recently in the social networks, there are a lot of questions raised about the conflict of interest in the sphere of public procurement, for example. And the Agency on Combating Corruption has conducted an analysis of such facts. For example, in July and August of this year, we have conducted a survey on public procurement, on conduction of the auctions in the public institutions. And we have revealed more than 300 facts of illegal activities during the auctions or tenders under the public procurement. And we have reported about this to the relevant public administration bodies on these violations, and we have instructed them to cancel such agreements. So they have been declared null and void. However, in our legislation, there are no provisions that foresee punishment for committing the conflict of interest, for creating the conflict of interest. Therefore, the Agency on Combating Corruption and the General Prosecutor's Office was recommended to these two institutions to introduce the provisions into the legislation on administrative and penal punishments for such kind of violation of law, like creating conditions for the conflict of interest? Thank you for your question.
Assalomu alaykum. Abdulla Yodgorov, gazeta Uz.
The question now I would like to pose, please, could you tell me, I would like to have you to answer to the first question as a citizen. The first question, as a simple citizen of Uzbekistan, what do you think? Is the court of Uzbekistan is independent? The second question, when we when we talk about the guarantees of the Kurds, for example, in regions, the decisions by the Kurds are different, and in Tashkent, taking into consideration the social status, the decisions, but the Kurd decisions are a bit different also. So what measures are you going to do to tackle this issue? The first question, as a citizen, is the court system is independent or not? I knew that you would ask this question. How old are you? I'm sorry. I'm 27. When I was in your age, I was in a court. First of all, if you had 27 years, 5 years ago you were 22 years. I can even give you my lecture. You are 22, so you can compare your. I talked to Mr. Garcia a lot. He's an envoy to the United Nations on court systems. I asked him a question. Which court in the world is independent? I always say that court system is not independent, he answered. That means the judges, one of the achievements for the judges is transparency. That you can easily come inside the court hearing. And secondly, is that you can easily cover them on the mass media. We are not talking about the quality, how we cover it, and the courts that they can independently take the decisions. And regarding the second question, you are not correct here. First of all, study the case carefully. We individually assess every case. How many cases you abolish? Yeah, actually, I every day have 95% of the people were not complaining about the court. That means we had 936,000 by October cases. 4.5% were abolished. So can you understand that? Court is giving assessment, independent assessment for each case. So he cannot approach generally. So each judge would look at the case independently. This is very important. So he also asked the question why this case was abolished. So in each world, in the world, we have 3 instances. I'm so sorry to tell this. There is a head of the corruption. He knows about this. So actually, we had that place in 7 instances. I will give you an example. One instance when we were initiating this institution. So 50% of the world cases, after they have already called witnesses, and they already after that they are going against their work, and they're withdrawing withdrawing the claim. So we're not talking about, we're not caring about the defendant. So every judge has its own consciousness. Let's talk about the administrative judges. Can they abolish 5,000 decisions of the hakims, of the city administrators? This year we had 1,600. That was mentioned by the minister. They are working very seriously on that, because the mayor's administrations, because we're now working hard on the personnel capacity development of the city mayor's administration lawyers. So today I can say that court system has become independent. In the future, so we talked a lot with Miss Charlotte. Thanks very much that she visited Supreme Court. We talked a lot. Some of the reforms require 15 years. We cannot wait 15 years. Our people had not access 18 years to the doors of the Supreme Court. It was closed. No one was admitted. No information was given. No statistic was given. Now everything is transparent. One journalist was taking an interview. I was asking from him, now you are taking an interview from me. You talked about the mass media. Have you read? So he doesn't even have an idea about the. In 2020, there was a plenum decision that. Because we know a lot from the journalists, but here we're talking about the analysis of each case. In the court hearings, participation of the journalists, it's also kind of capacity development. It's approach to the judge also as a human being. So here we have to look at the case from different points. Second question. So I have already answered to the second question. There are Supreme Court plenaries. So there is a council. It's united from the practice you're saying. So the goat thief in Karakalpakstan, in other two areas, could be given the same. So you take the article and then you read. So here then there so petition for detention, why it is given like that? In each case there is an individual approach. There are different requirements in the criminal code, so you have to understand, you have to the sanction of the article. There are rights. Someone has given this in the mass media. If the lawyer is talking about this, so you have to run away from him. Basically, a real lawyer, without reading the real case and materials, so you have to run away from the lawyer. Talking about the materials of the case, so it's a great process. So do not make decisions early. So recently I've been talking to one of the young Minister of Higher Education. I told him, could you open, for example, a department for journalists, especially working on the court system? It's very important. So recently we've been in the mass media. I didn't. So now they're just covering the process, the case that still is ongoing case. So, for example, they are giving some. There wasn't any decision was given. You don't have to write about this. You cannot educate public with these kind of articles. What we're asking from the journalists, we need specialists in this sphere. For example, let me give you a question. why there are many criminals on fraud criminals. So we try to make to enter the institutions, to higher institutions, very transparent. Why still people are paying for bribery to enter the institutions? So this kind of problems should be covered analytically. So we have to do a lot of work on that. So next question.
Good afternoon. We have question from social media. I will read. First is the protection of individual property rights were reflected in the action strategy. Yes, we have to respond to questions from social media on property rights. We have a good tradition now. We understand that the economy cannot develop without protection of property rights, and Mr. Kazim also promotes this, that now courts are upholding property rights and it's guaranteed. But from now on, whoever violates property rights will be, of course, punished. We are now preparing, developing a new draft law. We are trying to eliminate limits to property rights, and we also researched international standards, and the draft law will be soon presented to public. Let's give the floor to our guests. Well, if no more questions, we will not take up any more of your time. Of course, we have our opportunities. You have opportunities to raise questions. We have all social media accounts. You can direct questions there, and I would like to wish success to everybody. And we would like to express our gratitude to our moderator for the good job done.